Welcome, fans and subscribers, to episode 6 of Last Week in Gaming. We have a packed show, but first, let me introduce our special guests. First-time special guests, 3 first-time special guests. We have Zach, we have Bob, and we have Richard, and returning special guest with us, Brian. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Well, like I said, we do have a packed show tonight. We're going to go through games you can play in the cloud from GFN Thursday. We're going to talk about another busy week of Destiny with the Guardian games Week 2, 2023, and Season of the Deep releasing later. We're going to look at what Nvidia is doing with the 4060 Ti, and there are actually going to be 2 versions of it. We're going to talk about the exciting server slam that elapsed over the weekend from the 12th to the 14th. And also releasing last Friday was Tears of the Kingdom, the new Zelda game. We have much to discuss, so stay with us. 2023, the third beta that is able to be played for Diablo 4, and the second open beta. I want to get our first impressions here. I had fun with this one. Bob and Richard, what were your first impressions for the server slam?
I'd say
I had a great. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I enjoyed it a lot. In terms of between the last beta and this one, it was basically the same for me because I'm not doing any story missions or anything. You know, I'm just kind of leveling up. I'm saving that for the release. But I was impressed how, for considering it was a server slam, there was no wait times at all. Like you log right in, and you know it gave you a good opportunity to see the different classes and all the reworks worked out. But I had a lot of fun. It was a good time.
And we're going to talk about those reworks in a moment. But Richard, I want to get your first impression from the server slam.
Yeah, as Bob was saying, right? No real lag issues logging in, no queues, no anything like that. So I think they got their stuff together, or they had a lot less people logging in, right, with the release of Zelda this weekend and Mother's Day. But I've been playing the Druid class, and to get into a little bit of the changes that happened there, they did improve the Druid a little bit, but it still feels a little squishy. So hoping they do a little bit more there, or it gets better over time. But overall, it was a good experience. I like the loot rate drop that they have now, right? I like that the legendaries don't show up every hour or so. It takes quite a bit of effort to get a legendary, so you get a little bit more excited when you find those things.
Makes them more legendary indeed. And also, guys, did you drop camera? Because I'm only seeing my camera. Okay, we're back. We're back with the camera.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I just turned mine off because I have never played Diablo.
Oh no, yeah, you guys can stay on this and contribute as needed. All right, we will return here to this update. Let's talk about some of the changes that came into Server Slam that Blizzard introduced, having received feedback from the last 2 betas. I'll start with the first one. And these were actually reiterated at the May 10th Diablo 4 developer stream that happened 11 a.m. that day, Pacific Standard Time. The first is the reworked dungeons to create opportunity for less backtracking to take place. I myself and Richard, Bob, we went through a handful of dungeons. I did not feel the backtracking like I did in the first 2 betas that
Agreed.
we tried. How about you two?
Yeah, I honestly don't know if I did any backtracking. They do a nice job of closing the loops of where you need to go, and the only time I kind of went back is just to explore the other half of the circle, I guess. But I thought the dungeons were a lot better this time.
Agreed. And I also like that, like, enemies in certain dungeons, your requirement for beating the dungeon is to kill all the enemies inside there, right? And so they would have the enemies come to you rather than you having to go search them out, which was also kind of helpful too. So yeah, definitely an A+ on dungeon design now.
Yeah, completely agree there. And I almost felt it was slightly circular. We weren't moving quite straight, but it may have been one particular dungeon. But I did sense there was a reworking that took place. It was apparent to me. I'm interested in the comments what others thought. Moving on to the next one, there were, and these are some of the highlights from the long list that Blizzard provided in a previous episode of Last Week in Gaming. We did talk about what Blizzard was going to do that would go into the launch, but ended up going into the server slam for the most part. The added barbarian buffs is one. Now, I was a barbarian. I didn't play as a barbarian in the last two, and I did not die frequently in the dungeons. Now, I understand there are other individuals that play as a barbarian. They may have done, likely did, much better than I did. But the experience I had was, even with that close combat, only being able to get to the level cap of 20, I wasn't dying left and right in the dungeon. So I do think there was good work that was put there. And that is an overall effort to balance the classes as well, so that one is not necessarily OP compared to the other classes. The next one is the decreased frequency for the legendary items to drop. Richard, you touched on this. This is going to be alike to the game's release, and I completely agree that legendary items, they should take somewhat of a grind to get and acquire, and it makes it all the more special and all the more legendary. There were also new control options, performance fixes, graphic settings for PC players, including DLSS version 3. I actually did enable DLSS with my 3080 Ti, and I did see a 20 frame bump in doing that. And now I did have it on quality and not on balance or performance. But I'm interested in the comments what individuals thought for DLSS that enabled that. Let's see what else here I have. And I found it interesting from the developer stream that Rod Ferguson joked that the Necromancer class is the best class in the game, despite all of the overall balancing that's being done. I'm wondering if he was referring to or alluding to the Book of the Dead that the Necromancers can use, but he did not specify. Richard and Bob, do you want to transition to talking about, also in the development stream, using what we learned from the development stream? What's next for the game, the seasons, the battle pass? What are your thoughts on how this game is looking for launch?
I think.
For
Go ahead.
launch, I think it's looking good, right? I'm completely satisfied at this point. I wish I got to see other aspects of the world than just the one that they locked us into
Fractured
for these
Peaks.
3 betas, right? It would have been nice to go to other lands. But I'm excited. I think the developers have done a really good job. I think they did a good job of listening to the fan base. And again, the loot's right. The gameplay feels right. Just kind of waiting to get into it.
I'm excited for the launch. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the game is, as ready to go as you can get a game for launch. I didn't really experience any bugs, maybe one or two small ones, but nothing major. The only thing I might have a problem with, and I know it's been a hot topic, is the seasons. I'm not sold on a hard reset of the level. I know that I guess this is a Diablo thing for the seasons from 3, maybe. This is also my first Diablo game. I haven't played any other.
During the stream, not to interject, Bob, but during the stream,
good.
Joe Pipiore and the others there, Rod Ferguson, they talked about how the seasons, they're going to use Diablo 3, the seasons in Diablo 3. There's going to be a similarity between how those work and drawing elements, attributes of those seasons into Diablo 4. Now, to the extent, I don't know, but that at least was just mentioned. Anyways, other thoughts there, Bob?
All right, and I think there could be a nice middle ground of, somehow making the game more challenging enemies, a different difficulty tier or something, that it's not just a hard reset every 3 months, because I'll give it a go. I'm not going to be completely turned off, but I'll try it out and see what happens. But they have ways to respec your character as often as you want. So I just don't understand why a hard reset has to be done.
See,
And
I think it's a good idea because it keeps you more engaged and it kind of forces you to play other characters that you might not necessarily have gone with out of the get-go, right? I mean, there's going to be a point where you get kind of tired of playing the same class over and over and over again.
Maybe,
Whether
but then
it's
you could just
forced upon you or not, I can kind of understand that, but I don't know.
we'll see.
from what
I'll
you're
say
seeing,
one
Brian
thing.
and Zach, does it make you want to get into Diablo 4 any?
It's funny. I was just
No.
going to say that I am a fan of Overwatch, also made by Blizzard. My girlfriend loves Overwatch and WoW, and you'll always get quality from a Blizzard product. As gamers, we always like to complain about our favorite games, but that's just our
Yep.
relationship. But you're always going to get quality and depth with a Blizzard product.
Our expectations are so high. We want the best. So we're hard on the developers to give us that. That resonates. Brian, thoughts? Can I get you to jump into this game and create the indomitable character class?
So I did play Diablo 3 for a little while. Went through the campaign 3 times because that's what you do in Diablo. Is just keep going through the campaign, and I lost interest completely. I didn't even make it to season 2. I didn't know there were seasons in Diablo 3. So essentially, Diablo 4 seems like it's going to be a lot of the same with the extra pain of, hey, we're also going to reset your level. And I can't get behind that. Like if World of Warcraft did that every time, I would lose my mind.
I really like the
I mean,
go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
even when they did the level squish in World of Warcraft, I'll bring up World of Warcraft, another Blizzard product that they should have learned this lesson from. They do these things on occasions called level squishing. And long story short, Blizzard got to a point where the max level cap was 120. And essentially they just said, hey, we this is getting kind of ridiculous. How much higher are we going to go? We're not Elder Scrolls. So they turned around and they decided to squish the levels back down. And it upset a lot of people because you're talking hundreds and hundreds of hours to get your level to max level for expansion after expansion after expansion. And then they're going to turn around and say, yeah, we're bumping you all back down. So and the way it worked was it wasn't even the same amount of experience points that are required to get to max level cap. So the new players coming in could get to max level in the same time it would have taken you to just get from the expansion point where the expansion kicked in to the top level. So they started alienating a lot of folks in World of Warcraft too, and I haven't gone back to that one either. So I just think I think Blizzard, Activision, and now Microsoft in cahoots, that it's just, I don't see a good future.
This is a great
I really
dynamic,
don't.
though, that we have here. This idea of retiring characters or classes that we build or actual builds within the game after so many seasons. We don't have to within that next season, but there seems to be an interest where these builds are eventually going to go in the Eternal Realm. And then during that season, you will build a new character and be able to extract attributes from those previous classes, almost like a big box of Legos that you collect. You throw them all in there and then you take them out. But to the point that Richard and Brian were making, to each their own on the arguments here, is it going to discourage players to have to do that? You put in all this work. You don't want to see that character go. Yes, you do get to keep it in the Eternal Realm, but can you use it again? The impression is no, but you can draw attributes from it. I'm interested to see what's going to happen. It's not going to discourage me ultimately to play the game, but I am perplexed and interested in how this is going to work.
I think if you're a Diablo fan, like if you've just grown up with the series and played them all the way through, it won't be as discouraging. But for me, as someone who's never played the series and who's into this game and loving it, I think those people could get turned off pretty quickly by the constant reset.
And I do think it's interesting that during the developer stream, it was accentuated that during that immediate next season, you don't have to retire the character right then. But there was the impression given that eventually during a season you will need to do that. There is opportunity, though. At least the impression I got from the developer stream is the introduction to new seasonal content can encourage you and captivate you to create a new build, perhaps with a new class that's introduced instead of the ones that we have, the necromancer, the druid, etc. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's the viewpoint that I kind of take, because I don't want to play the same character over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I think that'd get boring quicker than, or be more upsetting and make me lose interest in the game quicker than it would if I had to switch characters up
If you have to choose.
every season or so.
Yeah, if you have to
But
choose
yeah,
between the only ones that are available now,
yeah.
I can see that. To
And I can
Brian's
see
point.
that also where they're going to expand, right? They have like a depth of characters from other games that they can choose from like that. Who is it? They have like the Amazonian, they have the Paladin. They've got a ton of different characters, and anybody new that they could be making, right? There's been rumors about like a Dark Knight. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's see what they do. It'll be a process, like anything else that they kind of do at this point.
Well, Brian's not convinced. Blizzard should be worried. Blizzard should be shaking in their boots. That's my opinion. They have their work cut out for them. Zach, any other comments on Diablo 4 and whether you're going to enter the main?
Now I've been watching these videos. It looks fun. I'm a different kind of gamer, as you know. I remember watching the first trailer for Diablo 4 with my girlfriend and being like, "Oh man, that looks pretty awesome."
It captivated me
but-
at the Xbox Game Show last year, I think in 2022.
Yeah, I love the art style. Like I said, I'll sing Blizzard's praises for Overwatch as much as people like I say love to complain about their games, but I'll certainly complain when they get it wrong. But it's a good product when you get something from Blizzard. So I have no doubts that they're going to push this when it's ready, as it sounds like it's ready.
And you know what? I will tell you one thing about all Blizzard games. Their cutscenes, for the actual cinematic
Amazing.
cutscenes, they are the most beautiful cutscenes you'll see in a video
I
game.
have to
Yeah.
agree with
Yeah.
you on
The
that.
intro, best one of all time. The intro to Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Just the combination of the music and the cinematography, and it was also like the first one that came out in 1080p. So it was like you got the nice monitor because World of Warcraft was finally 1080p, and you're watching this cutscene in 1080p, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, the intro, one of the introductory scenes to Diablo 4, where Lilith returns and she descends down and talks to one of the priests, and that was stunning. It really was. It had that dark yet aesthetic feel. So I agree with Brian wholeheartedly on that.
also Nightmare Fuel Flesh Web. Like that whole cutscene, like that Nightmare Fuel like flesh web that just kind of appears with the sacrifices.
It's stunning. Yeah. Blizzard, great job. But you should be worried. Brian's not convinced. But keep up. Keep up with the beautiful cinematic scenes. That is our Diablo 4 server slam and season analysis from what we understand from the developer stream. That is our update for that. Our update on Guardian Games 2023. The Titans, they're doing well. They're prevailing in week 2, but there is a interesting reason, and it may not be to a surprise for those, but an interesting reason why the Titans are doing well with the recent death and passing away of Lance Reddick, who played Zavala in Destiny. He is an awoken Titan. It has captivated and inspired, encouraged many people. Even if the Titan is not the main class that he or she uses, it has captivated people to bring back their Titan, power it up, and play to prevail in the Guardian games. I think it's a sweet note. I'm glad. It makes me, even though I've been a warlock, as I mentioned in the last episode, I've been a warlock since the beginning of Destiny 2. I'm happy. I'm happy for the Titans. And I understand the reset showed that the warlocks win, but let's just forget about that. Let's have the Titans win the day. I'm showing on the screen here a weapon that you want to know about if you do not already. The Heir Apparent. And this is a exotic heavy machine gun. It has two features to it. It has the heavy slug thrower, which when fully spun up can fire a hail of bullets at the enemy. And this is a really interesting element as well to this. The Armor of Colossus, and it is a perk, another perk, and it provides a powerful arc shield around your weapon, which is really neat. And this weapon is obtained through the completion of Top of Class quest, and this follows the Best in Class quest. So if you have acquired the Taraxippos, I probably butchered that, but the Taraxippos Scout Rifle, then you completed the Best in Class quest, and then can graduate to the Top of Class quest. I think that makes sense, Best of Class to Top of Class, because I suppose Best is not at the top. But Brian, you're fed up with Destiny. What happened? I'm not just going to do this and say Destiny is awesome and great because I think so, and I'm completely myopic. So what happened, Brian? What happened to Destiny? How did it lose you?
It's recycled.
Okay.
I mean, and you can make the same argument that every game does it, but when you have a season set up and the main mechanics seem to rotate, where it's like, hey, this is a wave-based thing where you have to kill a bunch of things and stay alive. Cool. And then like 2 seasons later, it's that same mechanic.
It's back to the grind.
Yeah, but it's like, you have one season where there's a raid and you got a couple other activities. Next season, you'll have a strike and a couple other activities. And then it just rinse and repeat. It's the same cycle over and over again. And it kind of gets old. It's like, how many more times are we going to fight the Cabal for the same crap? Like, give me something new. Give me some actual aliens or something. Like I want to kill a green man.
Green men. I don't think they have. Yeah, I don't know if they're working on that. I don't think they are. But we're going to talk about Season of the Deep next, and that may be the opportunity for the green.
If they bring Cade back, I'll come back.
Okay. I still think there's a way to do it. And let me know in the comments what you think about this. But I think there is a way. I do.
Maybe he's got a shady backup somewhere.
That's right. And they played on that, the AI element, the backup in one of the previous seasons too. It may have been the season prior to, well, it was right before Lightfall. It was the AI. There was a backup for it. I'm foggy on the details for that. So, Guardian Games 2012.
Death Knight back.
Say it again.
I'll pull my Death Knight out of mothballs. Let's go.
You're going to love this update. You're going to love this update. All right. Our next update. Season of the Deep. There were some developments on this that were detailed in this week at Bungie, that update. What you see in the background is the trailer that Bungie released, but there is more to this. We have a confirmation that Deputy Sloan has returned. So, Brian, you may be very excited about that, and that may captivate you to come back. Bungie has given a quote, something big is lurking in the depths. And that quote is very likely referring to the Leviathan that we saw on the image released the week prior. And there is a weapon that you want to know about for this new season. It is the Last Right Scout Rifle, and it is a Tex Mechanica Kinetic Aggressive Scout Rifle. It will have 3 ornaments, and we have on the screen the 3 ornaments, and these are familiar. You're going to see an ornament for Vanguard, an ornament for Crucible, and an ornament for my favorite Gambit. And I know that the last week's special guest, Jay, he is going to be all over this Gambit ornament over the other two. But moving on here, Season 21 is introducing more than just the weapon and the Leviathan. But actually, let's talk about one ornament. You see this, I'm just going to call it. It's a ridiculous picture, and this is a Guardian ornament, and the theme is, Brian's dying. Tea time in the deep sea. Those were the words from this week at Bungie. Brian, how much money is it going to take to get you to wear one of these 2/2 ornaments on your Titan or Warlock or Hunter? I think the Warlock has wings, if I'm not mistaken. That's what it's looking like. There's a half 2/2 for the Hunter, and then I think the Titan has the cape looking 2/2. How much money, Brian? What's it going to take?
Not touching this with a 10-foot pole.
Not touching it. Gentlemen.
It's a third rail topic.
Gentlemen, what do you think? Is it off the deep end for them to do this? I take no responses. I don't want to wear a 2/2.
Following up Destiny.
Yeah, the tea time deep sea, I was thrown off by that. Because you have the seriousness of the Leviathan and Sloane coming back and Titan coming back, and then we're thrown with the 2/2. It's different. I don't know. I'm going to be wandering around looking to see how many people are wearing this seasonal ornament. Other than seasonal ornaments, there's going to be exotic armor tuning that is done. And we have the source for this in the description. There are two reasons that Bungie is going to do this, and the reason it was delayed for Season 21 when they originally wanted it in Lightfall is just the effort put into getting Lightfall ready for release. But the two reasons: first, to identify underused armor pieces and reassess them, so to augment their appeal. So looking at what exotics are not used, why they're not used, and how do we get them used more often. Second reason, to decrease outlier armor pieces that are too powerful, which may be likely why they are used so often. So is nerfing going to happen as a result? Let us know what you think in the comments. Another development for this season, Eververse is changing. 2 new features for this. This is really interesting. Get this. So first, when you visit Eververse, there's going to be, it may be a section, that was at least my impression, but there's going to be a highlight of specific items and bundles that you want. That Bungie, through Eververse, knows that you want these items, so they're going to be put up front. And the second is viewing recommended items that you don't have, that you might need for your character. So it's customized. You can go to Eververse and find, what do I need? What do I need to use? I'm interested to see how that turns out. Season of the Deep, we can look forward to that after the Guardian Games 2023. Any concluding comments, gentlemen? Or are you thinking about the 2/2s more in tea time?
Oh, no, now I'm just thinking about the Deep from the boys.
Yeah. There you go.
I like the idea of what they're doing, of trying to figure out what exotics are used and what aren't used. And like, I remember the famous nerf was Galahorn, because I remember that being an incredibly overpowered rocket launcher, I think.
Yes.
And they nerfed that one hard because it was too good. But I'll be interested to see
DPS and raids and bosses, absolutely.
Right. Oh yeah. So I'll be interested to see how they make bad ones better and the too good of ones, more, even them all out a little bit.
But speaking of the Deep, that would be a great ornament. Why didn't they think of that, Brian? People dressing up as the Deep, maybe for the Halloween event. I don't know. We can.
So where would the octopus ornament go?
That would be the ghost. That would be the
Oh
octopus. No. Strike. Not going to do it. I mean, the octopus would be close by. No. Where should it go, Brian?
Oh, I was just gonna leave that joke alone.
Okay. I say put it on the ghost. A ghost octopus. Season of the Deep. That is our update. Let's talk about GFN Thursday, the new games that you can play in the Nvidia cloud. The first one you want to know about is Void Train. The next one, Occupy Mars, the game. And lastly, TT Isle of Man Ridge on the Edge 3. Also, Ultimate members can enable, as of now, real-time ray tracing in Fortnite, playing it on the cloud. For our next update, we're going to talk about the RTX Nvidia 4060 Ti and 4060. Now, this is interesting when there was... And the information that we have here, this is from one of our sources. We have it in the description. This is leaked information. It is asserted as credible, but just take into account this is leaked information. We're going to talk about 3 cards. The 4060, the 4060 Ti, which has 2 versions. One with 8GB of VRAM and another one with 16GB VRAM. The amount of wattage required is 165 for the 16GB versus 160 for the 8GB and gigabyte, excuse me. Now the 4060 takes your 115 watts. Brian, is 5 watts enough for the 16? Are you convinced? Is Nvidia on the right track here with doing this? That's the question. The speculation.
All right. So looking at the big picture here.
Okay, let's look at the big picture.
So speculation was out that a 4060 Ti was going to come out, right? So normally what they'll do is it's going to be pretty much the same card. It's just going to have a slightly better processor. It's what NVIDIA's done in the past. A couple of times it's had more memory, but not often. So in this case, what they've done is they had already slated to release the 4060 Ti and the 4060. The specs were out, stuff like that, but they made the mistake in not addressing the community first. Even though this is supposed to be a relatively budget card compared to the other cards of the 4000 line, you still had NVIDIA move forward with this 8GB card. So they had already started manufacturing, and then the gamer community was like, we'd really love to see a 16GB card. And they go, crap, we can do that. So they go and they do that. And I guarantee you, once the 4060 Ti's 8 gigs sell out, the only people that'll make it from that point on are going to be the budget third-party manufacturers. Because what you're going to end up with is the reference cards are going to be the good cards because those are the only ones that are going to manufacture anymore. And then the 4060, that's just going to be, it's going to be there. But I think the 4060 Ti 8 gig is going to be the hardest one to find after the initial release.
Okay. Interesting. We'll have to come back and see how that plays out, especially in July and then following May. I think it's interesting, though. I don't know if you have a thought on this, but the 4060 Ti releases before the 4060, so did they just try to make something generic to have another option? You would think the 4060 would release and then the 4060 Ti. We've seen that with Ti's releasing after.
They're betting on the fact that the Ti is going to sell out. Whichever card they release first is going to sell out regardless. That's just the way the GPU market is right now. And pretty much anything, including Taylor Swift tickets. Look that story up. That's hilarious. So in essence, what you're getting is NVIDIA wants profit before the end of their fiscal year, before they go into the holiday season. They want as much profit as they can get in that quarter. So to beat the clock to the quarter, they're going to release the 4060 Ti, the higher price point. So they're going to sell that. They're going to sell through the stock almost instantaneously. And then in July, they get to save the day by releasing not one, but 2 cards, and the Ti version is going to be better and probably only about $100 more. So it's a smart move. It's a weird move, but it's a smart move to pad their numbers at the end of a quarter.
Yeah, and I'd like to look at the tests that come out trying to maximize the 16 gigabyte of VRAM with that extra 5 wattage. So that's interesting area for me, at least, to look at. But you mentioned that they may have trouble selling the 4060 Ti with 16 gigabyte because the 8 gigabyte will sell out. So, gentlemen, I have a question for you. How do we solve this problem? What if Taylor Swift tickets were sold with the 4060 Ti with 16 gigabyte? Thoughts on this?
That would
Would it
probably
work?
jump the price $1,000.
Probably jump the price of $1,000. But, you know, they could give a free game as well with the Taylor Swift tickets. They could be a little creative here. Get these things to sell.
But it'll really depend on what the price points are. And the 4060, I don't imagine that card's going to be that expensive. But if the 4060 Ti 16 gig ends up being more expensive than the equivalent spec'd out, AMD card, you're going to see a lot of people upset.
Now let's talk about AMD. Brian, you follow AMD avidly, and we've seen this pattern of Nvidia pushing out cards more frequently than usual. I at least would argue it is AMD making them sweat. Is that part of the reason that they are trying to push these out, or is that just a separate situation?
It's twofold.
Okay.
One, it's a reactionary response. Time and time again, AMD's come out, with the same year of their graphics cards, and they've been dunking on Nvidia in all the best ways. Not only on price for what you're getting, the performance of the card, even in some cases the thermal performance, and they fit in most cases. So I mean, when you smack all that together, it's kind of like Nvidia has to do something to get profit. And what they're doing is they get to go, hey, let's release all of these SKUs, confuse the living hell out of people, make them think they're getting a deal, and push these cards out, and the scalpers will buy them anyway, so Nvidia is going to get their profit regardless. The scalpers
it is confusing. I won't call myself a subject matter expert in the Nvidia graphics cards. I at least try to follow, keep up, understand what Nvidia, AMD are doing. So yeah, it is perhaps a tactic, like you said, to be different.
It's the same thing Apple does with Samsung.
Okay.
So Samsung has a couple of size variants of their phone. There's really not that many models of a Samsung Galaxy phone. And then you look at Apple. Apple's got the SE. They've got, and then whatever year it is, you've got your potentially a mini, which they just discontinued, your regular phone, your larger version of that phone, then the Pro, then the larger version of the Pro, and then now you're going to have the Ultra. So you're talking like 5 or 6 SKUs for one phone. It's the same thing. You give people a bunch of different options as opposed to 3, and they're going to tend to try to go for more options because it's more flexible with pricing. If you don't have the extra $50 to put to this card, you might get this card but you weren't even looking at the competitor AMD because they just have 3 price points mainly.
It makes sense to me, gentlemen. What do you think? Does it make sense? I take the silence as...
I don't think that any of these cards are really worth getting. I'm personally waiting for the 50 series before I even think about upgrading. But that's just my personal preference there.
That's a great point, Richard, because it depends on what the individual is buying it for. Do they expect the 4060 Ti or even the 47, which we talked about in episode 2, to be this ultimate 4K card? Is the person interested in 2K gaming? The 4070, based on, I think it was PC Gamer in episode 2, we talked about that. The verdict was it's a great gaming card for 2K. I don't know if we can expect that for the 4060 Ti or just a very expensive card that does great with high definition gaming. But to your point, yeah.
I'll tell you what, I think that 4060 Ti 8 gig is probably going to have a niche as a mining card, because that spec for spec, it's almost identical to where the 1080 Ti was.
Now that's interesting.
And the 1080 Ti is still one of the best mining cards you can buy.
I read in the past that Nvidia has enforced some controls to prevent cards from being used for mining, and I don't have those details in front of me. Have you heard about that, or I'm inclined to believe there's a way to circumnavigate that?
They only lock out certain SKUs.
Okay.
So typically it's the high performance
Battery
cards, or the
low.
cards that they're pushing are the ones that are locked out. There are also third-party drivers that are made for more of the budget cards that will override the Nvidia lockouts. But there's a lot of different defeat mechanisms out there. But I don't condone doing this, and it's not the views of the channel.
Understood. Yeah, but it's a possibility that this may occur, and that may be the niche for them. So, objectively speaking, yeah, that would be an interesting development. We will have to look for that in future daily gaming updates, as well as Last Week in Gaming episodes. All right, that is our update for the 4060 and the 4060 Ti. Okay, gentlemen, this segment is for you, but I'd like to kick us off, if I may, get us started. I looked back at the history of the game, and I really found it interesting. There was a need, for a game, and an early prototype was being designed for development of dungeons. And this prototype ended up becoming a game. The prototype was to be able to build dungeons for your friends to explore, and it turned into the Zelda games. The significance of the name Link is to bring people together to explore dungeons. The element of dungeon is very important, and it's important in Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild. And the first game was Legend of Zelda, that released February 21st of 1986. There are approximately 20 games in the series. Longevity of time to cover, but the series has come a very long way. Zach, let me turn it over to you first and talk about the series and Tears of the Kingdom.
Well, if you're around my age, you probably started with the original that came out in '87, but I didn't. I chose the masochistic route of starting with Zelda 2 at 5 years old with my uncle, or my great uncle, and there was a summer where he was my babysitter, and we played Zelda 2 all summer, and it was so difficult, and it was my introduction to not only Zelda, but really video games. I think I probably played Mario by then, but that was my first Zelda, and as difficult as that game is, and frustrating, it was great. I still remember every minute of it. I still play through it. That's where I started, and I've picked up each one since Ocarina. Probably played every single console game, none of the spin-offs, but all the story games I've pretty much played and finished.
Brian, any thoughts on Zelda, the series, and playing the games?
You could not have described Zelda 2: The Adventures of Link in any better way. That game was just, yeah. So that was actually the first Zelda game I ever beat. Because for some reason we had Link, but we never had the original Zelda in my house. It was when we visited family that I played Zelda. But yeah, since Zelda 2, I played pretty much every Zelda game, minus I will say I did not play any of the GameCube ones, because that was the one Nintendo console I skipped was GameCube.
Underrated. Wind Waker.
But yeah, but now they've got the port on the Switch, so I can go back and play that now. But yeah, I love the series. I'd probably say my favorite Zelda game overall would probably be either Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask.
Ocarina of Time is just so classic. really took it into the future beyond side-scrolling games, 2D games that I grew up with. Really just kind of opened it up like Mario 64 in a way, but to adventure games more so than platformers. Ocarina will always be the top of my list, no matter what.
Especially with the transition between Kid Link and Adult Link, and just like it was just so good.
Yeah, really set the stage. Now, what's interesting in the last two games is the introduction of voice acting, which they never had. Different sound effects and things like that, but you just were reading text as we're seeing in some of these screens. And now that they've actually fully fleshed out the characters, it's really interesting with the styles they've chosen. Instead of going realistic, they've gone with a very unique art style. Character introductions remind me of anime. I'm not that big into anime, but that's what it reminds me of. And so I really like the direction that they've taken it, just from an aesthetics point of view.
Oh, absolutely. I question I question their choice on the voice of Ganondorf, though. Jerry Dorf is or if you're an Archer fan, the voice of Cyril. Oh god, I can't.
Is it
I can't take him
villainous
serious.
enough? Is that the reason you say that?
It's an interesting transition from those two characters to Ganondorf.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that.
What scares me is that Nintendo had a lot of success with the Mario movie, and if they try to do any other of their series like Zelda, and they're going to have to do what no one's ever done, is give Link a voice, and that I just know they're going to
There's
screw
actually
that
a
up, or I hope
series
they
in planning.
don't. But
There's a series in planning.
you know there is.
Allegedly, there's a series in planning.
Now they're going to do Kirby because it's more towards their main audience. But if they do Zelda, that terrifies me. But no, it's fair point. It's not for everybody.
Zelda is one of the ones in planning, allegedly with I think they said it was possibly with Netflix.
We'll see. But I've been playing this game all weekend. It's been excellent. The boss fights are excellent. The evolution of the series, kind of going back to its roots, but also, Breath of the Wild and in the original Legend of Zelda, you just kind of wander around, find your own adventure, which isn't for everybody. Tears definitely adds a little more linear style. You got to go through the story, which I think they're doing a top-notch job with. Boss fights are memorable. I mean, we haven't started talking about the construction, and Lord knows YouTube will provide you with lots of interesting construction videos. But it's just a really well-rounded game. Lots of love, lots of polish. We were giving Blizzard a lot of praise earlier. A Nintendo game's going to have that polish too.
Speaking of construction, I think it was an IGN source article that to complete the puzzles, people are just building bridges to actually circumnavigate, the need to actually solve the puzzle. So I don't know if you encountered the fortune that bridges can bring to the puzzles in the game.
Well, it's a Twitter meme at this point over the weekend that, when in doubt, build a bridge, basically. There's been some obnoxiously long ones that are sort of breaking the physics of the game. But, do whatever you want. If that's what someone wants to spend, like, it would probably take you at least 30 minutes to build some of these ridiculously long, what is just a long pole or a bridge. So, if that's how you want a game, then go for it. And that's what Nintendo's providing you, is just go through the story, go build a long bridge, or go build some other crazy things you can find on the internet. There was some videos of a tank and a stealth bomber. I guess more late game stuff. Spoiler alert, but everything's on the internet now. But it's a lot of fun. It's a great evolution of the series. It's not, they're not reinventing anything.
Let's talk about another concern that fans have had, where the elements of this game draw too heavily from Breath of the Wild, and I say too heavily where it's a reskinned Breath of the Wild, same game but different title. And not all fans feel this way, but some of them do. Have you found that this is just another Breath of the Wild, or is it something unique in its own that builds upon Breath of the Wild and extends the journey?
It's the word I used and that I borrowed from an article I read was a great evolution of Breath. And I was worried about that too. It's the first Zelda with the same map going into consecutive games. worried that could be a retread. Yeah, you got the same, pretty much the same Hyrule with about somewhere between 3 to 5 years elapsed. So there's lots of different changes, new things. They built more communities, had more people. So there's been a lot of evolutions of it. It's not just a Breath retread. Spoiler alert. You obviously know you're in the sky, but there's also a whole nother level. So there's a lot of different, literally, levels to this game. With the addition of the dungeons, it really goes back to its roots, but also is a great evolution of the freedom that Breath brought you.
And speaking of the variation of levels, I talked about in one of the daily gaming updates last week, I think it was the one for the 12th upon the game's release, that the dungeons are unique compared to the ones in Breath of the Wild, because at least one of them, when you're jumping high, diving down into Hyrule, it triggers an event. Are you finding dungeons have events in them, or this is just some of them that do? The uniqueness of the dungeons compared to Breath of the Wild. Thoughts on that?
Breath of the Wild only had, from what I can remember, the 4 main dungeons with the beasts that you had to unlock. Maybe a couple other dungeons. The Yugi clan, you could maybe call that a dungeon. That was frustrating. But this really has the old style dungeons, and what I found surprised and delighted about the most is that they were in places I didn't expect them to be, at least in this point in the map, or in the campaign where I'm at on the map. So I don't know if I'm going to get into too many spoilers, but you're going one place and then all of a sudden you realize you've got to go to a completely different area to get into the actual dungeon. And it was, as frustrating or weird as that may sound, not to give things away, it's really interesting how they all pull it off. And I haven't gone on a fetch quest yet or anything like that. No repetition. Maybe Breath had some frustrating repetition with the swords and stuff like that breaking all the time, but the dungeons are spot on. They're memorable. Some of the repetitions you can criticize Breath of the Wild for there's another evolution to them in this game that makes it a little more playable, or a lot more. That's a bad way to put it. Make it a lot more intuitive.
Bob, Richard, any thoughts you have on Tears of the Kingdom? Now, Richard, you told me you wanted to pick this up. You were going to go all out with the collector's edition. I think you were going to pull a me, basically.
Well, I don't even own a Switch. I've never been a big Nintendo console person, but I do love me some Zelda. My first Zelda was A Link to and yeah, I saw a trailer for this, and I'm really contemplating about going out, buying a Switch, and buying this game. So,
and that's significant that this game captivated you to consider that.
Yeah, and just the conversation I just heard just now is kind of swaying me in that direction. I'm not going to lie.
All right, Richard's going out. He's buying a Switch. Hopefully, if the Zelda ones are available, they look really neat. The themed ones, collector's edition ones. Yeah.
Did anybody happen to see that Nintendo Australia commercial that came out like the day before, last maybe Wednesday or Thursday? It was like the middle-aged guy that goes to work in his suit, riding the bus, and he gets home, he plays Zelda at night, and then he's riding on the bus playing his Switch, and he looks out the window, and it's just like he's, I don't know,
in the world of Hyrule.
That
right?
commercial really spoke to me. I really loved that commercial, but I'm also a really big Zelda fan, if you can't tell.
It's interesting how elements in our reality and everyday life, they could remind us of the games we play, and for a moment, a whim, we actually feel we are in those games. So that resonates with me. It's the merging of games and the real world, the non-virtual world. But these games, they are metaphoric and they are allegories of our lives, what happens in the real world. They're just very illustrative. So it plays on that. Brian, are you going out and buying it? Richard is. You two can team up. Both of you are. Yeah, you could do that.
Can't team up in Zelda.
No, I meant team up and go buy it.
Oh. I was actually just looking at the price of the the limited edition Switch.
There you go, Zach. You're doing it. It's happening. It's happening here on the channel. 2 people maybe going out. Is it sold out? I thought it was.
No.
No, it's
Sold
not.
out.
Okay.
No, you can get it on. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Target.
Well, there you go. It's still available. So if you were thinking about it, you weren't sure, and you are watching this video or listening to this on podcast as of right now, it's available.
Great adventure.
Great adventure. Any other thoughts on this guest segment? Any other avenues, areas to explore with Link and Peach? And
I would honestly love to see. I would love to see them go back and do a Switch version of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and just bump them up to the same graphic design for Tears of the Kingdom and the other game. Just have it be the same graphic style, but just update it to that.
They're doing that with all the other ones.
I disagree. I think part of what makes all the Legend games so iconic is they all, for the most part, have very their own very unique graphics and look. Like one Zelda game doesn't really look like another one. I think that's what helps keep. If they all have this exact same art style, I think they'll just start blending them together, and they won't be as memorable.
Well, not necessarily cloning it using the same textures and things like that, but the same type of cell shading they've been doing with this and with the Wind Waker.
This all started after this. What was it? The Space something 2000 Space World 2000 Expo, where they played what the GameCube graphics could be, 23 years ago, and they played a 30-second long video of Link and Ganondorf fighting off, and everybody was like, "Wow, that's what the next Zelda game is going to look like. It's going to be great." A year later, you got cell shading and you got the Wind Waker, and it turned a lot of people off. But that game is underrated. You were saying earlier that all the Zelda games have a different aesthetic style to them, and that stands out on each generation of console.
Mm-hmm.
But they're always going to feel like a Zelda game, and the Wind Waker was just as much of an adventure as this one is. It has its own limitations for the time, but that turned everybody off when they went to cell shading. They've slowly gotten more realistic, or really just different style now. But that was a turning point.
I think my favorite graphic design in a Zelda game was probably Twilight Princess.
I agree.
Because it was kind of a good blend between, some of it was very obvious cell shading and some of it was semi-realistic. And it was just enough of a blend to where it worked. And I mean, this is kind of riding the same coattails, but it does get a little bit more cartoony. So I don't know. I would like to see them go back to realism and a little bit closer to realism, how they used to do it. I do think the cell shading, I get why they're doing it. It's a hardware constraint because it's mobile hardware. If they ever went back to a hybrid console, I think you might start seeing more realism in the games again. But yeah, it's down the road. We'll see what happens.
I can't tell you, despite the Switch's limitations compared to everything else that you can fire up nowadays, you play this on a 75-inch 4K TV and it looks beautiful.
And that's due to the technology of the Switch, I take it.
I have the
Or is
first
it-
generation Switch too, so it's not one of the newer ones.
Okay. So it's the game itself.
No, it's still going to run 30 to 35 frames, and if you get a lot of baddies on the screen, it's going to drop a little bit. So we were talking tech specs earlier. You're not going to get 60 frames out of this, but it's going to look pretty.
PC port.
Well, apparently there's emulators now, so
Yeah.
I don't ever try any of that stuff, but I've seen headlines.
Yeah.
And the scrolls.
You don't ever want to be on the so Nintendo is almost as bad as Sony when it comes to the copyright stuff. But they go after a lot of the folks that install like the whatever the latest generation of their consoles are. The emulators that come out for that, they will literally track down everyone who's downloaded it.
Yep, absolutely. I got some good lawyers.
Sounds like it. Indeed. Well, Tears of the Kingdom and Zelda, the series. How far it's come, where it's been, and the game you
All right.
fans and subscribers, we are going to conclude our show, episode 6. We hope you have enjoyed the show. Let us know in the comments. Also, you can listen to us on podcast. We are across services, including Google Podcasts. We have some exclusive content like trailers to the shows. We're going to have some extended commentary on Apple Podcasts. So look for the logo, look for the name, Gaming for Insight. And in the words of Commander Shepard from Mass Effect, I should go.